Here it is. This is our fancy built, all the billet goodness race engine in a box. And this is a big moment for me. You know, I've been waiting for this engine. I've been really excited for it. But more than that, I have never done this before. I've never bought a built engine that just gets delivered to me on a pallet in a box, you know? Every engine I've ever bought, I mean, maybe it came on a pallet, but it came from a junkyard. It came out of a stock car. And I've got to take all that stock junk off. I got to clean it up. I've got to hop it up and upgrade it, and rods and pistons, cam, heads, whatever the case, put it back together, and then put it in whatever car it's going in. I've never got an engine that's just built, dynoed and everything, and just shows up, and all I gotta do is take it out of the box. Like, it's crazy, because I grew up, you know, loving cars, and as a kid, seeing car shows, seeing them get crate engines delivered, and they just open it up, and it's this fully dressed, ready to go engine, and it's something I didn't think I'd ever get to experience it, and we're about to experience it together. So this is a big moment. It's a big moment. I am so excited to see what this thing looks like, and I'm so excited for what we're gonna do with it. We still are a little up in the air on that, so I'm gonna need your help with that. But first things first, we gotta experience this magical gift that is opening our race engine out of a box together. Did I mention it's in a box? All right, guys, before we get too deep into today's video, I wanted to talk to you about today's video sponsor, PDS Debt. So getting into debt is very, very easy, incredibly easy, but getting out of debt is one of the hardest things you can do, and that is where PDS Debt comes in. They provide a service to match you with solutions tailored to your specific financial situation. Everyone with $10,000 or more and eligible debt qualifies. There's no minimum credit score required, and you can save money while paying your debt off in a fraction of the time and help you get out of that debt rabbit hole. I mean, I have spent my whole life, every step I've made, trying to avoid falling down the debt rabbit hole because it is so easy to get down there and so hard to get out. To me, that is one of the ultimate freedoms, not having debt. So if you're interested in getting yourself out of debt, head to pdsdebt.com/Taylor to get started on your free debt assessment today. It only takes 30 seconds. It's quick and easy and a great way to just see where you stand and see if this is a solution that might work for you. So again, that's pdsdebt.com/Taylor. Huge thank you to PDS Debt for sponsoring today's video. It's time to get into the projects. Let's get to it. All right, what do you think? You think the box just lit? Oh yeah, it does. So you're gonna see it before me. All right, on my count. 3, 2, this is gonna be embarrassing if it gets stuck. 1. Out of the lip. Oh, it's all saran wrap, so you don't get to see it that well, but oh my God. Dude, that is wild. Look at that, on the stand and everything. What's in here? We got a banner, some shirts. All right, we got a box with fitting. I think intake spacer. Got the fine blade for this. Oh yeah, that's better. All right, now for the real plastic wrap. Ooh, it's so satisfying. Whew. Well, that's the top half. Oh, the billet goodness. Whew. All right, well, here it is in all of its goodness. It feels so good to finally have my hands on this engine and see it in person. This thing is going to be so cool in the car. Now, you might be wondering, why another LS? Well, this isn't an LS, this is actually an LT. Now that part's a little confusing because back in the 90s, GM had the LT, they had the LT1. Put it in a lot of things, Camaros, Corvettes, lots of stuff. And then the LS came out It was around for a long time. And then now we have the LT again. So it's a bit confusing. There's an old LT and a new LT. This is the new LT. So it's basically a revised version of the LS. It's the same rough architecture, same rough packaging, footprint, all of that stuff, but with a lot of revisions and updates from the LS platform itself. So that's why we decided to go with the LT. You kind of get more bang for your buck, in my opinion, and you can use simpler components than you would have to with an LS to get kind of that same power holding capability. So this particular engine is from LME, late model engines. Now they are at the forefront of the LT platform. Do a lot of stuff for, C7 Corvettes and CTSVs and things like that. They also do build LSs, but the LT is kind of their primary focus. Now, I originally was thinking about just doing an LS to keep it simple, but after talking with them in detail and learning more about the differences and the revisions and the updates that came with the LT, I decided it kind of made more sense to go this route. So that being said, we did go kind of a different we went off the beaten path with the way we decided to build this engine that I don't think is kind of like the standard way someone else would do it, but to me it makes sense. Let me explain. So we have a bunch of billet goodness, as I mentioned, right? We got billet timing cover, billet valve covers, billet nice low pro but huge volume intake manifold, billet rails. We've got a 5-stage Fluid Works by Motion Raceworks dry sump pump. I think we're the first ones to have it with the setup for the gear drive for a mechanical fuel pump, so we can run that off the same belt as the dry sump pump. We've got the billet LME oil pan, and with all this stuff, especially the dry sump, you would think that the block and the heads must be the craziest thing ever too. However, they're not. They're actually very simple. It is a 5.3 aluminum block, stock aluminum block, half filled, and stock casting heads. Now there's a lot of stuff going on in there, which we're gonna look at, but the block and the heads are pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So why put a fancy, expensive dry sump on it? Now, if you followed me for any length of time, you know I like my dry sumps. My Miata has a pretty basic 3-stage dry sump. The Vet has a 6-stage dry sump. I see a lot of people will build a crazy, to the nines engine and then run a wet sump pan. For me personally, I put the priority on the other systems. I put the priority on the oil system as opposed to the engine. I think it's money better spent because your engine really needs two things to survive in general, right? You need good, consistent oil supply, and then you need good, consistent fuel supply. If either one of those has an issue, it does not matter what the rest of the engine is. So you could have a billet block, billet heads, all of that, but if you don't have the correct amount of oil, you don't have enough oil supply, you have oil starvation, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Same with the fuel system. If you have any issues with your fuel system, you start to lean out a few cylinders, you're gonna melt them down regardless of what the rest of the stuff is. So my logic here is basically to invest money in the life support systems, as well as the stuff that, in theory, hopefully, should not get torn up if we were to tear the engine up. Because I think the chances of us pushing this thing past its power holding capabilities are a lot smaller than the chances of us making a mistake, whether that's in maintenance or tuning or whatever the case, while we're learning and setting this up and tearing it up. Because regardless of what block it is, what any of that stuff is, if any of those things go wrong, it doesn't matter. It could be a stock engine or a fully built to the nines engine. It makes really no difference to a certain point. You have a little more buffer, but at the same time, all your stuff's got to be right at this level that we're going to be taking this engine to. So we don't have as much on the line when it comes to the block and the heads, but ideally, if we were to tear those up, we'd still have all the other nice stuff to put on the next engine. And we can grow into it and carry all this stuff over if we wanted to do a larger displacement, aftermarket block, long block, and swap all this stuff over. So that's the idea. Now that being said, I'm not saying this is a dressed up stock engine. It may be a stock block and stock heads, but we got a lot going on in there, and we're gonna pop her open a little bit and take a gander. But first, let me give you the rough specs on this thing. So it's 363 cubic inches, 10.5 to 1 compression, Cowley's Compstar 4-inch stroke crank, got Cowley's Compstar rods, diamond pistons, diamond rings, Clevite bearings, ARP studs, all of that. We've got 652, 630 lift cam, but we're still hydraulic roller, so we don't have to set any valve lash, which is important to me. It makes maintenance and simplicity a lot better. And dyno-wise, this thing was very impressive. So this is an engine set up for forced induction. We're going to be shoving boost down this thing's throat. It is not built to be an NA engine. It's relatively small displacement, not crazy compression, all of that. But it still made 594 horsepower on the engine dyno, 477 foot-pounds of torque. They ran it out to 8,000 RPM. It made peak power at around 6,900, 6,950. So that is a very healthy amount of power NA for what this engine is being built for forced induction. So, you know, the more power you can have in a barefoot, you know, the less you've got to do on the forced induction side to get to the power levels you want. So I was definitely surprised by that. I didn't think, you know, this little engine would make that much power, but put out some steam. So that's the gist of the engine. Now let's pop the covers off, since we got to anyway, to do the next step, and take a look at what it looks like underneath. Oh, Josue's here, perfect timing. It's your first look. What do you think?
Wow, that is nice.
All the billet. It's a little large.
That's big.
It's a big old dry sump pump. Yeah, we got billet intake manifold, billet valve covers, billet timing cover, billet oil pan, billet valley cover.
Wow. And it's already been dynoed.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
What are your guesses on how much power it made? Mind you, 10.5 to 1 compression, 5.3 block, built for boost. Engine dyno.
600.
You're close, 594.
That's pretty impressive out of 5.3.
Right, that's like
5.3. Wow.
Like, it is technically stroked, but the fact that a little 5.3 block with stock casting heads made nearly 600 horsepower on an engine dyno, that's pretty impressive. Ta-da! Valve train wise, it's nothing too crazy. Got LT rocker arms with the brass trunnion upgrade, which is actually, I think what I have in literally every engine is the standard rockers with the brass trunnion upgrade. You can see the valve springs, titanium retainers, all fresh and clean inside. We've got hardened push rods, much larger, big old push rods. All the stuff we really need to make this thing hold together under some boost. You can see how big the head studs are comparatively. All right, I'm gonna put this valve cover back on before I drop anything in there. Thought so, but you can see all the port work, the intake runners. Oh, we also, I forgot a billet part, the billet valley cover, snazzy unit, and we've got this giant point for crankcase ventilation, which we don't really need on this engine because of the dry sump will create enough vacuum. I'd like to lift this thing off the stand and toss it in the RX-7 engine bay and see how it fits in there, because we don't really know. Now, that being said, I'm not convinced that this is the car it's gonna go in. I'm considering putting it in my grandma's old daily driver Monte Carlo instead. So I'd like to get an idea of where it's gonna fit better, which one makes more sense. Pro tip, if you use a large enough zip tie, you can get to the latch, take it apart, and use it again. Good whacking, dude. obviously not back all the way. Oh, it's probably about the height it would be. Does look pretty cool. Shoot.
Whoops.
This is a bad idea.
It's
I thought I had a plan.
kind of at home.
Yeah. I think with it all the way back, it would clear the hood. Maybe. Maybe not. I really wish we could. I mean, the problem is, even if we took it off the stand, we'd have to hang it from the top with no intake manifold. So,
It's still gonna be a little tough.
some way, somewhere, we're not getting it exactly where we want it. It's pissing me off. Yeah, no, we definitely clear the steering rack. So that's what they love having, like flush with the rail. We could go up a little more, pretty much till the bottom of the pan's like flush with these pickup points without it being. Yeah, and that's about where you'd have it height-wise. Now we could see, we could do this. It might clear. That's not clear. If it sits on this, it's not gonna clear. So what's the problem with this car? Hood height. So short. Oh, well, I may have to eat my words on this one. Well, the engine would obviously be sitting back a bit further than this, but we can't really do that with the engine on the stand. Looks like the intake manifold might still stick through the hood on this car. It's just, you can kind of see by looking at the front clip, it slopes pretty dramatically after the tires. So there's a chance it would clear, but I don't know how good that chance is. But this is about the exact height that the engine would be, so that way the dry sump pan is pretty much flush with the lowest point of the frame. So that way if we were to do any sort of wheelies or something, it's not the the low-hanging fruit, you know, and this car is pretty low. But that's a pretty good engine height, realistically. Fits in there nicely. We definitely got room for, you know, to build headers to the turbos, whether we were to put the turbos up here in the front or where I'd really like to put them, which is back here with downpipes going out, boom. I mean, it fits in there nice, and it looks sweet in there. Because I think because the car is so small, it looks, and the engine's so cool looking with the LME valve covers and intake manifold and the dry sump. I don't know. It looks sweet. It looks right at home, as Josue said. Oh, man, that is a cool sight. It's kind of real. I was definitely leaning the other way. So the option A is to use this engine, which we now have, to build this car. Which, if you're unfamiliar with this car, it is a 3/4 chassis. So basically, stock frame rails up here to here. Basically, it's like a foot of stock frame rail. Basically, from there to about here. And then it's chrome moly tube chassis all the way back with a 4-link setup. This car has some nice, you know, carbon tin work. Does need the front of the funny car hoop raised. I cannot fit. I've tried every which way, and the seat is as low as it can go. But it's a race car. It is very lightweight. You know, the chassis, as it is, as complete as it is, obviously minus the engine, weighed 1,050. So we could probably comfortably be under 2,000 without me, maybe even under 2,000 with me in it, depending on, you know, how extreme we went trying to keep it light. So pretty light car. This engine setup's capable of, you know, an easy, comfortable 1,300, 15, 16 on a day where we gotta let its tongue hang out a little bit and risk it. I think it would probably live there fine too, but, you know, safety margin. And yeah, full-on race car build, right? So that's option A. Methanol, no intercooler, maybe no cooling, maybe small radiator. That's kind of undecided. Mechanical fuel pump, all that. Option B is to put it in the Monte Carlo here. So again, this is my grandma's Monte Carlo. She literally picked me up from kindergarten in it. I used to have to sit in the floor of the back seat when me and all the cousins went somewhere. The plan was to do kind of a basic nitrous LS. Probably take the LS out of my Miata because we're putting a NASCAR motor in that, and rebuild it and put it in this with like a carb style intake manifold and direct port nitrous, stick shift, AC, kind of just a fun street around car, a basic refresh build. Now, instead of that, we could use that engine, that glorious looking thing. God, every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh man, it looks so good. Anyway, we could use that in here. Same kind of plan, twin turbo, but intercooler E85. Most likely stick shift. Do an 850 chromoly cage, but keep the full interior. Rewire the whole car with a PDM, but keep all the factory functionality. Basically make it a race car, but like show car style, everything nice and clean and polished and fancy. And then stick shift for drag and drives, and be able to run as fast as like an 850 legally, and do drag and drive stuff with it. Now, the reason I am or was leaning that way is because it's a lot simpler for us to find time to go do a drag and drive, where it's just kind of like a week-long thing. You take the car out there, you drive it, than it is to run a whole separate race program. This is a race car. There's no street driving this. There's no doing anything other with this other than 8th mile passes down the drag strip. Maybe a quarter-mile pass if the gearing can support it, but dedicated only race car. All it can do is race, just like the Vet there, which we have not done a single competition this year with the Vet because competing and going and traveling, it's hard. You know, if you haven't done it, you might not know the logistics of it, but I mean, you're talking a day or two of prep beforehand, at least a day of travel, a lot of times two for any out-of-state event that we go to. Because we're in Florida, we're kind of far from anything. So 2 days of travel, and then you're there, and then 2 days there, and then 2 days back, and then unloading. You're talking about a week ordeal that everyone's got to take off doing everything else that they need to do in life to go race. So it's tough to run a full-on race program, and I don't know how feasible it is for us to run this car and run the Vet program and do everything else we're doing. You know, I don't want to build it and then it barely get used. So that's where I'm torn. That car, if we build it, nice street car, E85, air to water, I could go rip it around and kind of relive my childhood dreams, watching, 2,000 horsepower street cars rip around on old grainy YouTube videos, and be able to build that car to the nines as nice as I possibly can. Do the nicest fab work I can, the nicest parts and pieces, because it is a forever car, and just have it be a cool kind of all-around car. Keep AC in that, but clean it up and keep as much of the street comforts as we can while making it a rowdy race car. And stick shift, which I think would make drag racing really fun on a prep track. Oh, and we could do the no prep street classes with it too, if we wanted to. So kind of gives us a lot of options. But it looks so good in there. So I don't know. I'm conflicted. Definitely gonna have to think on this one, get your input, your feedback. Which way do you think we should go with it? I just really want to build this car super, super nice, and using that engine for this gives me that option. It also opens up the possibilities for this car. If our goal isn't to be the most serious race program with the most reliable, simple, whatever setup, we can get a little more creative with the engine platform in this car and do something a little bit out of the box, because it's more about trying to see what we can create and what it can do than go out and be competitive week in and week out in racing versus how light can we make it with how much power and how fast can we make it go. What do you think, Josue? Where are you leaning?
Oh man, I am conflicted. It's a hard choice.
Are you leaning a direction? Just lean the direction you're leaning. Give me some lean. One direction or the other. You don't even have to.
So tough. I can't.
I don't know. I don't know either.
We need some more time. We need you guys' input.
Yeah, that. So that's that, I guess. That's the new engine. We need some help deciding which car it should go in, which effectively means which car we build first. If we don't put it in this car, it doesn't mean we're not building this car. It just means if we do build it, it'll be probably a very different direction. Or we could go a more budget direction, like a basic 5.3 and cheap turbos and whatever, see how fast we can make it on a budget. I don't know. There's a lot of other directions we can go than building a really high-end race car that only gets to get used when it's being raced. I wish we could put it in the Monte Carlo, see what it looks like. But obviously, Monte Carlo still has an engine in it. I'm torn. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of it. If you have another suggestion that's totally separate, but seeing it in that car kind of made me almost switch sides. But I still think the more logical choice is to build the Monte Carlo. I think I'd really enjoy that build personally, from a personal standpoint of being able to put a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears into a car that has that sentimental value to me. And having an excuse to do that by having a fancy, cool engine to put in it. So I don't know, let me know. A lot of jibber jabber this episode, but that's, you know, sometimes we gotta jibber jabber and talk these things out. So let me know, let's talk it out in the comments. I'll see you guys there, but for now, that is gonna be it. So thank you guys for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks for everything you do to make all this possible. And yeah, can't wait to see you next time. We got something really big, another big shipment coming tomorrow. It's all happening at the same time. So I'll see you guys for that, but for now, that's it. Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.